Today is the 8th of November, and this is my love letter to my fellow Kiwis, and don't we all need this love? Today, the 8th of November, would have been my father's 107th birthday. Isn't that incredible? The span of my life touches the life of someone who was born in 1914. How he would loathe you, Ardern, for what you are doing, betraying our country. There is so much I've wanted to say. I've been through a week where I've had to tighten the security because it seems like this government is interfering with all my communications, and we've done that. We've got a terrific IT team up. Again, my apologies. Your letters, your emails, your desperate calls come in, and I want to reply to everyone, and I do whatever I can each day, and then there are hundreds more that I'm not getting to. So I am going to have to surrender my little bit of ego, my love ego that wants to reply to each one personally, and I'm going to have to send a standard reply, which is not how I want to do it, but I want you to know I hold in my heart all of your calls. I want you to hold hope in your heart before I begin with the rest of what I need to say in this love letter. Many of you are fearing being thrown on what looks like some kind of scrap heap of unemployment. But it will only be temporary. This evil will only be temporary. When I go into the darkness myself, when I look at the destruction in the last week in my own family situation, things that I've had to go through on a personal level, as so many of you have had to go through. When it overwhelms and I lose hope, as I do at times, when I feel utterly inadequate for all that we are all called to do together. No one more or less important in this. We are all equally important in this togetherness, this unity that will bring us our sovereignty and assure our freedom. When I lose hope of that, I go inside and I remind myself that love is always, forever, way more powerful than evil and wrongdoing and tearing a country apart, and allowing death and looking the other way, and causing societal mayhem and confusing people with lies, and paying out our media to tell those lies, and the media people who are willingly betraying us all to tell those lies. As an aside, it was wonderful to see in Australia, actually, a group of protesters in Sydney, and they really turned on a besuited reporter looking terribly proud of himself like a peacock. And they just all said, you tell lies, Channel 7. You're not representing the truth to us. You're telling government lies. That's what we need in New Zealand. The media now need to be scared of us, the people, as well as the politicians. And Ardern, I know you've come for me because you are scared of people power. You are scared of the people rising up, and you should be. You see, in a country of 5 million, you cannot hide the truth. So the truth that is positive is that we will win this, and you will get your jobs back, and there will be much better jobs, many of them. And those who are truthful and honest and brave, and I include here any media people willing to step away from your bosses and say, I'm not telling these lies anymore. I include medical people willing to stand up to the Medical Association and say, I am cracking under the brutality of sending sick people away and telling them I won't look after them unless they're jabbed, because you, the Medical Association, are threatening me in order to uphold a wrongful move by a political power-grabbing government. I, as a doctor, will join the doctors at NZDSOS, look them up, the brave ones who we will revere when we come through all this, the ones who said, ethically, I cannot do this. It is against the Hippocratic Oath. It is against everything I know that is right and true. I don't care if I lose my money, my status. I will stand for what's right. Those doctors, they're still there. Those teachers who are being brave and saying, I won't be coerced into something I know is not what I want in my body. Those wonderful nurses who were frontline workers, and we all praised you, and now, what? Willing to throw our nurses on the scrap heap? No. This hypocrisy will all wash away. The lies, the wrongdoing will wash away. You will have your jobs back. So I want you to hold on to the hope. And the hope is this: we will all need you. We will need you to work for the party that I am absolutely resolved now on forming. I've been through long dark nights questioning whether I'm even capable of doing this, but the people who are coming are superb. Nothing short of superb. Only one did I have to question and wonder if that could have been a plant. Everybody else has been a genuine kiwi. But we are astute and we are watching out. And we're smart. We're a smart group of people and we're growing steadily. And we'll be calling on all of you eventually. So I want that to give you hope. And I have a beautiful poem at the end of this that I'm going to read for you. Now the part that's really painful. I get so many stories, but this one, if it doesn't move every single Kiwi, I don't know what will move your heart. And this includes you, Ardern. At a boys' school in Auckland, a group of elite runners have been coerced and forced to have the jab. 16, 17-year-old young men, the flower of our New Zealand youth, the fittest and finest. Who knows what athletes might be or might have been among them. 2 withheld and refused the jab. A lot of societal pressure there. So that takes a lot of guts. Of the others, 50% are saying that particularly when they lie down, they're really having heart issues. And then last night, one of their number, a young 17-year-old boy, has had a heart attack. And what I've been told is that the parents are beside themselves. But moreover, I understand that they absolutely do not want to go to the New Zealand media, in whom they have zero trust to tell any truth at all, that they want to take the story to international media. I understand that absolutely. I'm so ashamed that I ever worked for this, what I'm seeing now in the New Zealand media that feeds us these lies every night. If you would like to contact me, I would love to tell your story and honour that story, if I can serve you or help you in any way. If your story would help protect another young man from having it, even through your grief, perhaps you would be ready to. There are other stories that I'm going to tell, and we are going to have this media arm telling the science and the true stories of this living experiment among our New Zealand population, these stories that are not being told by this Prime Minister to this country when she forces this jab on us in her endless, drivelling, dishonourable, dishonest press conferences. We are going to have a media arm that captures the voices of the voiceless. All of the ones who are being kept off Hillary Barry's nightly barrage of absolute rubbish. Get the jab, get the jab. She has no concern either. Is it true that Tova O'Brien of TV3 and Ardern flattered together in London? This I'm being told, but I don't have time to research these things. If anybody knows that, I'd appreciate you letting me know. I need you to very urgently think about where this all goes. I heard from a friend yesterday who has another friend who has a little business, a beauty business actually, and she said, you know, I just feel miserable. I've had to coerce people who didn't want the jab into having the jab to keep their job. And then others who stood out, I've had to get rid of them. And I was willing to go along with the 2 jabs. And I was willing to go through that horror of doing this to my fellow Kiwis. But now I'm sitting here and I'm facing a 3rd jab that this government is already talking about. And she said to my friend, I know in my heart all this is wrong. I know that I am being forced as an employer to do something that just feels so wrong to me. All of you who are willing to do that to your employees, stop. All of you employees who are allowing your employers to go along with it, say to them, we all walk out. Manage a mass walkout. They will back down. They need you, not vice versa. It is such evil doing that this government is doing to make employers their henchmen, enforcing these brutal policies that divide New Zealanders. But even beyond all this, you know that it's not going to end. You know that this Auckland lockdown, hard and fast, has now gone on for well over 80 days. You know that she's playing us, don't you? You know that travel isn't returning for those who are vaxxed. You know that even if we get to 90%, they're going to go on blaming this mythical, terrible unwashed vax population, these lepers. It's rubbish. The vax is meant to protect you. And we are meant to have a democracy where freedom of choice is upheld. And this is what is being ripped from us. It is time to wake up. A conspiracy theory, once it's shown not to be a theory anymore, once it's shown to be the truth, becomes a conspiracy against the people. And we have to wake up to that. I want you all to listen to a podcast from Australia. It's called Cafe Locked Out. It's extraordinary. 2 nights ago, there was a doctor who explained so much about the jab. November the 7th, last night's one. Listen to that one. It's about the pandemic legislation in Victoria. 2 weeks to be considered. That's all. 2 lawyers are talking to them. And these 2 lawyers were reading the legislation and had to stop a quarter of the way in. And one of them had to go and vomit. The legislation is so brutal and so draconian and sweeps away all freedom so profoundly that I'm going to do a separate piece on that. I'm going to record a separate piece going through some of what they say. But if you could look at that, it's called Cafe Locked Out, and it's the broadcast of November the 7th, 2021. It's by a wonderful man, a playwright, intelligent, thoughtful, the artists and the thinkers who can lead us back from this nightmare. Where are you in New Zealand? Where are musicians singing to tell us the songs of the horror? We need our artists to stand up against tyranny. But he is. And he's doing these interviews in this podcast. You can also get it on YouTube or Rumble. And it's so crucial what is going on in Melbourne, because I believe that we are in lockstep with Daniel Andrews and his brutality. And Ardern is following a few months behind. She may well try to sweep out something like this. Sweeping it under the carpet, of course. Sweeping being the word. Hey, look at the jab, look at the jab. And this hand, pushing through legislation. Look at our free speech legislation, it's called. What an irony. Taking away our free speech under the digital ID legislation that's going through our parliament now. But coming up is even worse. Coming up is the idea that Daniel Andrews can at any stage call something a possible pandemic. Even if it's happening in Africa, he can say it's a possible threat to Victoria. So I will lock this state down. They are creating little mini emperors all over the world who are completely devoid of conscience, completely devoid of integrity, and do not care the least for us living or dying. They want power at all costs, and they want to install themselves for as long as they choose. There's even a possibility that we could not have an election in 2 years to get rid of this ghastly government if they get this sort of legislation through. So you owe it to yourselves if you want any kind of country left, but you owe it to your children. You owe it to their children. The same words that my father, whose birthday it is today, November the 8th, told me. I did it because I owe it to you, Liz. And I owed it to my grandchildren and my beautiful little granddaughter who I saw this morning. I owe it to her, and you all do too. So listen to what's happening in Victoria, in Melbourne, and now begin to awaken. What I want to do today, I want to issue a challenge to Ardern. I want to ask you for a public debate on TV1. And even though TV1 are clearly your, can I call them servants? They obey you at all costs. Surely, TV1, you must see that the money and the advertising dollars you could get from a debate like that would ring your coffers even more. So why don't you put pressure for a change on the Prime Minister instead of the other way around? And say, give her a debate. 2 conditions. We will agree on the arbiter. It won't be your choice or TV1's choice, given the corruptions that we're all seeing in our media, our mainstream media. We will agree on an arbiter. Somebody like an ethical judge. God help us, I hope our judges find their spines and keep them with all the pressure that's going on. The judicial arm of government must keep the executive arm of government in check. Otherwise, we are all lost. So Ardern, I would like, with an independent arbiter, a debate with you live on television. And the second condition is that I'm allowed to put some questions to you at the end. You can ask me anything about my life. I would like to put some questions to you. Here are some of them. I've been sent this. I can't sit on this information and say nothing. It's giving me anxiety. I've been made privy to a discussion with a frontline pandemic in New Zealand who has disclosed that medical personnel are being called to Auckland within the coming couple of weeks to address a rise in vaccine-related injuries. It will be disguised as a new strain that is spread by unvaccinated people. The message reads on, please, I'm not trying to fearmonger. I want people to be aware before this happens, so that when it does, a lot of people know. The division tactics are going to ramp up massively. We need to be united, is the last line. And we are uniting in massive numbers, numbers you have never seen before, Ardern. And we will defeat this tyranny. If you want to write to me, you can still send them to Liz Gunn, but the better address is help@freenz, all lowercase, .org. help@freenz.lowercase.org. That includes those of you who might be in that group who've been invited to this covert meeting of how we do another round of Orwellian lying to people in New Zealand and blaming of the unvaxxed. Where does this stop? Anybody who wants to tell us what's going on, we will obviously check it out, but we will keep your names secure and private. And if you're happy, we will divulge it because it's crucial now that we all share to defeat the lies. So I would ask you, Ardern, at the end of the debate, if that's true, I would also ask you, are you working for some entity that is beyond our borders, either corporate or another country? Are you possibly divided in your loyalties? Do you actually even have any loyalty to Kiwis? Are you willing to open up your books to a Crown inquiry to see if you're receiving any payments beyond the emoluments you're receiving as the supposed servant of the people in your role as Prime Minister to New Zealanders? When were you first aware of the negative side effects of this jab? The negative side effects. And of course that encompasses, when did you first become aware of the large number of heart injuries that we seem to be having, particularly in our young, myocarditis, pericarditis that I've had, or the thrombotic, the blood clot injuries that are happening? When were you aware of those? Here's a more unnerving question. When were you aware of the first death that was linked to the jab? Now, I don't have time to research this, but someone may be able to help me. It's incredible, the information that's flooding in. So I'll ask you, Ardern, is it true that a young woman in an inner city school died within hours of a jab, and that your government representatives approached the family in their full-blown grief and confusion and fear and offered a $500,000 payment if they would keep it quiet? Is that even possible, that any human, let alone a mother of a child, could even contemplate that? Surely that's not true, Ardern. Surely you would have come to the country and said, I'm really worried about this jab. We've had a young woman die. We must stop the rollout. I'm not sure it's safe and effective. Wouldn't you? Or Blomfield? Don't you have a strong religious background, Blomfield? Wouldn't that really clash with your religious upbringing to lie at that level to New Zealanders? And I just think it's not possible. Is it? Could it be? Could it be? Have there been any payments, therefore, made to cover up other deaths or injuries to Kiwis, to stop them coming out in the news, and thereby causing such a public outcry that your rollout would have stopped? I would at this point in the debate be tempted to ask, how do you sleep at night, knowing the number of Kiwis who are dying and injured? How do you look your little girl in the eye and not think of all the parents going through agony when you're at home with your little girl? How do you ever wonder your little girl will look at you in 20 years? And I have a letter that I'm going to read in a future podcast from a woman who's written as Neve, asking you, Mummy, where were you in 2021 when all those Kiwis were injured and dying? What were you doing, Mummy? Do you ever think about this, Ardern? Where is all the money, by the way, coming from? The money to offer employers, I've heard, $40,000 if they will throw unvaxxed people on the scrap heap of unemployment. The money to put all these ads up. I checked out with somebody who's in the media, and it's about $2,500 for a 30-second spot on just Radio ZB at prime time. We've had thousands and thousands and thousands of ads on every radio station, saturation on every media for months now. Where are you getting that kind of money? And please would you open those books to the New Zealand public and tell us exactly what you've spent on this ludicrous rollout for this COVID that is less in terms of deaths, far less than the cancers. Oh, and by the way, does it sit with you that people are going to doctors and saying, I need treatment for my cancer, I need treatment for my rheumatoid arthritis, and the doctors are now saying, I won't do anything for you unless you're jabbed? Does that sit with you, Ardern? Are you okay with rolling out that policy and getting the Medical Association to enforce that with their doctors through threats and coercion? And Medical Association, are you okay with going along with Ardern doing this? You will all be answerable. We are going to start asking for people who have horror stories of doctors to write into us. You could write into them now and head it always. Medical story based Auckland, medical story based Christchurch. Let us know and we can start to file these. When this is all cleared away, those doctors who are unethical and doing wrong by their clients and not honouring the Hippocratic Oath will also need to be called to account. These are tough times, and if you go to a doctor like that, then you have to leave them. You have to record what they've done and said, the date and time, and you have to look either for another doctor or other ways. I am so sorry to all those people who are going through this hell. So where's all the money coming from for these payments? If there was a $500,000 silence hush-up payment, where on earth would you get that funding? Is it from New Zealand taxpayers? Is it from abroad? Surely you wouldn't do that. We need to know what you're spending on this. Other questions I'd ask in the debate. Oh yeah, here's one. Why are you not using the millions of dollars you're spending on the COVID messaging, the Orwellian brainwashing messaging? Why are you not spending that on new hospitals? You're so worried about our health. This is all to save the hospitals. Why not put that money into new hospitals that need upgrading? And how many ICU beds, I'd ask you in the debate, have you added since this COVID nightmare began? Have you added one? Because I was told you have not put one new ICU bed into any hospital in New Zealand. But again, our media, can you check that out? I don't have time. I have thousands of emails coming in from desperate Kiwis, and we are building a party to create something that may take this ghastly cohort of corrupted individuals, all of them, David Seymour, who's totally given in, Collins does the occasional foray, but do you really think she's going to give us back our freedoms should she get in? Who in this lot looks reputable, looks honest, looks honourable? Who? None of them. None of them. We are doing our best to build something that can bring good people, real Kiwis who care about this country, into government. So I don't have time to investigate that. But I'd really like to know how many ICU beds you've added, because you are so caring about our health, are you not? Isn't this what this is all about, Ardern? And why has this government not offered anything other than a Pfizer jab? Not even any health protocol, not even basic advice on fresh air and sunshine. No ability to go to our chiropractors, our osteopaths. So many of us use these. Our naturopaths who can put us on really healthy food and make sure we're having plenty of vitamin C and zinc and D3 and the protocols that will help keep us strong and able to withstand a virus. Why have you done nothing of that? Why do you put your jabs up with KFC, which is known to make people obese, and people who are obese and overweight are more subject to dangerous effects from any COVID or from the jab? Why are you not helping to create a healthy New Zealand? Well, I can tell you, when Free New Zealand gets into power, we will be doing that. We will be looking at far more than the pharmaceutical industry offerings. We will be looking at how to absolutely redo this country's beautiful health protocols with healthy food, fresh air, which was known in the pandemic of 1918, the Spanish flu. Fresh air and sunshine were known to help people heal. What have you done? Locked us down endlessly with no purpose and no end. Look at Auckland, what a mess. Well, there's one. I had a figure that 9,500 businesses in Auckland closed down last week. Can you tell us the weekly number of businesses closing down? And here's another one I'd like to ask you. How many weekly suicides are you being told about? Could we have those figures open and transparent at your next press conference instead of the endless, unnerving hand-wringing, the drivelling, the Orwellian doublespeak, the head movements that just look, frankly, make you look unstable and very unreliable and dishonest? Give us some truths. Give us some truths. Here's one. What's the deal you signed with Pfizer, Ardern? What assets did they demand from New Zealand? Because it's coming out more and more that their contracts are as draconian to the governments as this government is being to its people. We need to know what is in that agreement. There's no commercial sensitivity in that. It's our right to know. You signed up to that and you spent our government dollars, our taxpayer dollars that we pay to our government, to our servants. You be open with that. Here's a more unnerving question. It's well known now overseas that Pfizer demands assets. Can you tell me, was the Three Waters deal that you pushed through with absolute opposition across New Zealand, was that to give Pfizer access to our waters or another country? Was it something that the Chinese want? Is there another deal we don't know about? Is it something to do with America? Who are the people pulling the strings to encourage you to do what you're doing? We need to know what that Pfizer deal is, and you need to be open about it. Oh, and in any debate, I'd also ask you, when are you going to realize that you've lost the trust of most of your people now? You've lost our respect. We don't trust you. We don't believe you. We don't like you. We don't believe you care about us. And your acolytes that you've bought in mainstream media, the simpering, vain David Farrier, and it's very obvious if I look back through what's been sent to me about him, that you were old friends and he's always going to come to your rescue, even against Joe Rogan, trying to tell off Joe Rogan for doing a perfectly valid questioning last week of your tyrannical ways in this country. And then there's Tova O'Brien. I mean, can you confirm if you and she were flatmates? How many of your placements have got through this media and governmental system of systemic deception that's being rolled out again and again on trusting, good, decent, kind, hard-working, fair kiwis? How can you live with what you're doing to people? The nurses and the teachers who at the end of this week are going to be out of jobs. There are so many questions I want to ask you in a debate. So join me. It'll be our ratings rocket, I promise you. And it'll be so good for Kiwis to see that I have no fear of you, that I pity and despise you, the life you will lead when this is over. I have pages of questions, I do. I'm done with them for now. I think people will see. I think people will see that things need to be asked of you. And that's the purpose of this message. But there's a much greater purpose. All of you who write and are afraid and feel broken and wonder how you're going to get through this. Here's a poem, and I can't find the writer of it, but it was sent to me on a card. And it's resonated with what I've been through in my life. And I think it will give you courage. Stay with us. There have been times when I have wanted to leave this life, when I have really wanted to leave this planet. If you are in that number now, know that nothing is worth that. Nothing. Coming together And being together and fighting together for a free New Zealand is what will bring you through that. So here it is. There is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief which will lead to joy, and a fragility out of whose depth emerges strength. There is a hollow space too vast for words through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry deeper than all sound whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside which is unbreakable and whole. I leave you with that until my next message. I leave you with your own strength. We are in this together. Come together in unity, and we will beat this tyranny. That's my love letter to you.